This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 31 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper and Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, August 1st, 1908. I will add commentary to elaborate on what was happening in Westford 114 years ago. The first section for August 1st, 1908 is the About Town section. The petition for the county commissioners to make certain improvements on Main Street has resulted in the decree of the commissioners to the town for an expenditure of $5,000, with 2 years to complete these improvements, requiring an outlay of $2,500 the first year. Just what the bill of specification is not publicly known at present. Inquire of the selectmen. That this outlay will add to the heat of the already expected hot time of the annual March meeting is quite certain, but as the taxpayers of the center of the town pay nearly 3/4 of the taxes, this ought not to add summer heat to any gathering. The auction sale of schoolhouses Tuesday was a financial success to the town. George H. Burke bought the long-sought-for Pond Schoolhouse for $405. This schoolhouse was on Tenney Road at what is now 19 Tenney Road, and it was moved in 1940 to the Gould Picking Farm at 7 Gould Road, where I think it's still in use as a kind of a tool shed. Alec Fisher bought the center building for $750. This is probably what is now the house at 20 Boston Road in Westford Center. And Thomas H. Elliott of Lowell bought the Neshoba School for $280. This school was located at what is now 1 Land's End, formerly 140 Concord Road, and is located immediately north of the I-495 underpass on Concord Road. As this property now becomes taxable and adds to the valuation of the town, just like as not, down comes the tax rate again. I might mention that these 3 schoolhouses, along with 7 others, formed the 10 district schools that were in use throughout Westford in the last half of the 1800s. Reverend B. H. Bailey, who has a relapse for a relapse, is now much improved, and his friends are looking for his entertaining presence on the street and in gatherings. Good authority says that Hiram Dane has leased his farm for 6 years to Peter Cummings, a newcomer. Hiram was a Civil War veteran who had moved to California. The Honorable Herbert E. Fletcher is adding room and improvements to his house, which he called Gray Ledge, at Oak Hill on the Groton Road at his quarry, and at the same time furnishing aid in keeping the tax rate down. Michael L. McGlinchey, whose buildings were burned last April, has a new barn nearly completed on the site of the old one. The Dug Hill lot between Graniteville and Westford Station, recently purchased by Lowell parties, is being cut off, and David Sherman is hauling the lumber to George C. Moore's sawmill at Westford Station, which is on Depot Street by the bridge across the Stony Brook. 2 petitions will soon be presented to the school committee. One from citizens of Minot's Corner, which is the area around the intersection of Boston and Carlisle Roads with Littleton Road, and the other from citizens of the Stony Brook district, asking for a hearing on the proposition of the school committee to close both these schools and transport the scholars to the new school building at the center. Again, these are 2 of the old district schools. The petition from the Stony Brook School assigns 3 reasons why the school should not be closed. First, quote, we have a right to assume that transportation will be by electric cars. This we regard as unsafe and unreliable. Second, property will depreciate in value. Third, it is morally wrong. The second reason, that is the property depreciation, has been knocked out and scattered into fragments by the experience of transportation everywhere. And the third, that is being morally wrong, being a twin of the second, goes down and out with it. The first reason has a winter foundation only. It cannot be denied that the snows of winter will create an element of unreliability and upset timetable calculations for the electric trolleys, but this is equally true in principle of the, quote, one-hoss open shay, end quote, method of transportation. There are weather conditions when even the Little Red Schoolhouse cannot be reached. Is it any more of an upsetting of calculations if the center school cannot be reached occasionally? Besides, we already have several years' experience in transportation from the cold, bleak, blizzard-drifting north part of the town. But with this experience, there was no protest against the recent sale of their schoolhouse. Is humanity more tender and the snow drifts deep and the distance longer in Stony Brook and Minot's Corner than in that section of the town nearest the North Pole? It is hinted that there will be a hot time in the Old Town next March meeting if these schools are closed. Well, let it come. It would be a good idea to put an article in the warrant reducing the pay of the school committee. They are now paid in cusses and kicks. No doubt they would be willing to have it reduced. It's Samuel L. Taylor at his best. Taxes is the name of the next section. Now the tax bills have been quietly distributed to every individual. Some of them seem to have been charged with dynamite, and the $80,000 increase in valuation has caused an upheaval and lower rate and higher taxes in a violation of the law of harmonics. As a result, some nice friendships appear to have gone into the smash heap. Of this rise in valuation, over $20,000 was the result of new property in the Water District, which is basically Westford Center at this point in time. Nearly $10,000 was increased values in the Brookside precinct, and several $1,000s in various other parts of town. The balance of the rise was in real estate in the Water District. While it is true that the town has not been taxed to introduce this water supply, that it is the creation of the private individual, so are houses and barns, etc., private expense, but they add wealth and are taxable. If waterworks at private expense and fire protection at public expense adds no valuation to village property and convenience to the individual, then what a misuse of funds in causing these things to come to pass. Nor is this all the story. When an independent tribunal from the assessors brings in a verdict of $400 an acre as a fair value for a pasture for the town to invest in, joining as it does better land that is assessed $80 an acre, it is an important hint that changed conditions make a readjustment of values a matter of justice. When land sells for 10 times its assessed valuation and continues to, equity appears to demand that henceforth it be followed with a larger tax bill. That the new values are individually just right in comparison with others and couldn't be improved, no one for a moment claims such infallibility. But when it is remembered that there is nothing to measure values with, that it is largely a matter of individual taste and judgment and varies with each individual, it is clear that it is not an easy task to arrive at just values. The assessors have attempted no game of bluff or deception in the fallen rate and risen taxes in these villages, but simple justice as they saw it. If their eyesight was poor, so is everyone's who attempts the uncertain. The next section is the Westford Center section. Many patrons of our busy yellow cars, that is the trolley cars, making their hourly trips between here and North Chelmsford, have been heard to express their approval of the new signs recently placed on the cars. When leaving the village, it reads North Chelmsford in good, plain lettering, and at North Chelmsford it reads Westford. The lack of signs has been noticed by many, and this will certainly prove an aid to travelers not quite familiar with the line, and it gives our residents a feeling of being on the map. At this time, the North Chelmsford was kind of a terminus for the line that ran over to Brookside and then up to Westford Center, and another line that ran through the north part of town and went through Forge Village and Graniteville and on towards towards Groton. Dr. Walter J. Sleeper is at the Massachusetts General Hospital for special treatment. His many Westford friends are glad to hear that at this writing he is quite comfortable. He is one of our Westford doctors in 1908. Mrs. Edward Fisher, assisted by Miss Ruth Fisher, were the hostesses at a delightful whist party at the home of the former on Wednesday afternoon. It was a cozy party of 3 tables. Mrs. Henry M. Wright was awarded the first prize, a pretty framed picture. Refreshments of ice cream and cake were served. I believe at this time, 1908, the Edward Fishers were living at the old Abbott estate that was located on Main Street at the present entrance to Canal Drive. The home would be destroyed by fire in 1914 when the Fishers were living in it, and Edward Fisher, who was the town clerk at the time, was credited with saving many historic town documents from the fire. Miss Helen Hildreth of New York is making her usual summer sojourn with her uncle, Charles L. Hildreth, beautiful Prospect Hill Farm. That was located on, I think at this time it was the farm on, in the big yellow house near the top of Hilda Street. Miss Sarah C. Atwood has been enjoying the week sojourning with an old school friend near Portland, Maine. She's one of the 3 Atwood sisters. Reverend and Mrs. Charles P. Marshall have been spending a few days with the John P. Wrights at their summer home at Wessaquesset Beach, North Weymouth. Representatives of the Underwriters Association of Lowell were in town Tuesday testing the water pressure in the hydrants of the 3 villages. The next section is called Birthday Party. One of the prettiest of birthday parties was given for Miss Hilda Iles by her mother, Alphonse. Her nickname was Fonzie, Moran Iles, she would become the local Westford telephone operator in 1912. The party was given Wednesday afternoon at her home on Main Street from 2 to 5. The occasion marked the 12th summer of this sunny little maiden, and 15 of her young girlfriends came to help make the event a joyous one. Each brought a pretty gift to her hostess. Games of various kinds were enjoyed, as well as music on the graphophone, an early record player. A dainty lunch was served by Mrs. Iles, consisting of ice cream, cake, fruit, and candy. The table was prettily decorated for the repast, the chief ornament being a splendid birthday cake, ornamented with the customary candles. These were lighted, and while burning, each guest read a suitable quotation, ringing from grave to gay and embodying birthday wishes for Miss Hilda. The event was made especially memorable to her by a present from her mother of a beautiful upright piano. This is but the carrying out of a cherished wish of her father's, who had planned to do this for his only daughter 2 years ago, when his untimely death interrupted earthly plans. Her father was Joseph Douglas Iles, who died May 12, 1906, in Philadelphia, where he worked as a spinner in a textile mill. His body was returned to Westford and is buried in Fairview Cemetery. This gift is further supplemented with the promise of 2 years of music lessons by Hilda's devoted Aunt Mary. Those present at the party were Edna Day, Marion Perkins, Ardith Carter, Myrtle Gramier, Thelma Gramier, Mildred Kendrick, Marjorie Seavey, Ethel Mills, Marl Diesel, Hazel Hartford, Amy Perkins, Beatrice and Lillian Sutherland, and Eunice Smith. The next paragraph is called Reception. Last week, Friday evening, a farewell reception was given at the Pleasant Congregational Parsonage for Mr. and Mrs. William A. Perkins and family, who leave this week for their new home in Grafton, where Mr. Perkins takes the position of principal of the high school. During their 3 years' residence in our midst, beginning when Mr. Perkins assumed charge at the Academy, immediately succeeding the late lamented Mr. Frost, he, with his family, have made many and sincere friends, and it was a manifestation of this goodwill that prompted Friday evening's gathering. It was delightfully informal and friendly. Mr. and Mrs. Perkins, Elizabeth, Marion, and Theodore were bidden to supper with the Marshalls, and later in the evening, friends began to arrive with the happy intention of extending their greetings and goodwill. Light refreshments were served during the evening. A souvenir of the gathering was an autograph collection, accompanied with many friendly good wishes. Also, some photographs of Westford scenes. The idea of this pleasant gathering originated with the church choir, where Mr. Perkins has been so helpful with his fine voice. The next paragraph is entitled Picnic. An event of importance in the good old summertime to the children, and incidentally to older ones as well, is the annual Sunday school picnic of the Congregational Church. The same as last year, this took place at Willowdale. Willowdale was located in Tingsboro on Lake Mascuppick. It was established in 1857 and offered a hotel, a restaurant, a dance pavilion, and summer cottages, among other attractions. Back to the paragraph. A special car going straight through to the picnic grounds left Westford at 8:30 a.m. last week, Thursday morning, with a large and merry party, and returned in the early evening. Free transportation was furnished by the Sunday school to its younger members, as well as a huge bunch of bananas for the lunch. Among the diversions during the day were boat rides on the lake, the picnic dinner, and a ball game in the afternoon. To the faithful superintendent and Mrs. Osgood goes the credit of the success of this outing. The next section is the Graniteville section. At a meeting of the parishioners of St. Catherine's Church last Sunday morning after the 8:45 o'clock Mass, it was decided to hold a picnic or gala day on Saturday, August 8th at Schoolhouse Grove in Forge Village. That was right next to the Cameron School building. Among the special features for the sports will be the ball game between two rival teams composed of young ladies of Graniteville. These two teams are called the Villas and the Granites, and will put in considerable time in practice work from now until the great game comes off. The general committee appointed for the picnic was Joe Wall, general manager, J.A. Healy, treasurer, and Miss Catherine Conley, secretary. Another meeting will be held for the purpose of appointing subcommittees. It seems like Joe Wall is always involved with these kind of social gatherings. Ferdinand J. Leduc left Sunday for Sherbrooke, PQ, which stood for, back then, Province of Quebec, where he will join his wife and daughter, who were already there, and all will return to this village about October 1st. Sherbrooke was likely either Ferdinand's home or his wife's. It's located about 35 miles north of the Vermont border on the extension of Interstate 91 into Canada. Frederick G. Sargent of this village has recently purchased a Pierce Great Arrow touring car, and it certainly is a thing of beauty. I might mention that in 1904, Pierce made a larger, which had been in business for several years, made a larger, more luxurious car for the upscale market, which he called the Great Arrow. This became the company's most successful product. The solidly built four-cylinder car won the Glidden Tour in 1905, an endurance run to determine and celebrate the most reliable car. 33 cars entered the 350-mile race from New York City to Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The race was won by Percy Pierce, one of the founders of the Pierce Arrow Car Company, in a Great Arrow car, one of their cars. Owing to the difficulty experienced by the different stone dealers here in collecting money on stock delivered, the quarries of Lewis P. Palmer and Thomas Rafferty are practically at a standstill at present. Business is apparently all right as far as getting the orders is concerned, but getting returns from goods sold and at the same time keeping a large gang of high-priced workmen employed and satisfied with the prevailing conditions is altogether a different matter, and for that reason it is thought that not much work will be done by either of these two firms for at least 2 weeks. This village, that is Graniteville, is now thoroughly aroused over the appearance here of a mysterious stranger, or Peeping Tom. At first, many people looked upon the matter as a joke or a hot weather story. They have been given reasons to change their minds since, however, for last week Friday night, James R. Healy and John Rafferty, while walking up Broadway about 9:30, noticed a man crouched down in the gutter near the corner of 4th Street. The young men, thinking that someone was playing a joke on them, approached the man and asked what he was doing. The stranger did not answer, but made a lunge toward the young men, and they, still thinking that it was only a little pleasantness on the part of some of their friends, grappled with him. They soon found they had a powerful person to deal with, for he threw both of them aside and ran toward the railroad tracks. The young men raised an alarm and were soon joined by a crowd of 25 or 30 others, but the fellow made his escape. Officer Frank Healy headed the crowd and inspected the various streets, but failed to locate the man. Many of the men stayed on guard for several hours after, thinking the fellow would crawl from his concealment, but he failed to put in an appearance. As matters stand now, the young men of the village are not venturing on the public thoroughfares during the evening, while the young men are going about fully prepared to meet any kind of trouble. The unknown man has not done any harm as yet, but his actions are peculiar. He is described as a man between 35 and 40 years of age, over 6 feet in height, of heavy build, and has a heavy dark mustache. He wore dark clothing with a stiff derby hat pressed well down on the back of his head, and wore a heavy pair of iceman's boots with caulked soles. The shoes are well remembered, for one of the young men in the tussle received a kick from the unknown man and can testify that he did not wear slippers. The next section is the Forge Village section. Edward Hunt is improving slowly from a severe attack of blood poisoning in his hand caused by the scratch of his finger while taking a horn pout from the hook. Work on the new hose house has commenced, and work on the new schoolhouse is being pushed rapidly. Miss Catherine Brown, a member of the girls' swimming club, swam across Forge Pond one day last week. She is the first girl to do so, and much credit is due her for her perseverance. The last section for this podcast is entitled Birthday Party. Ethel Collins, the little daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Miles Collins, celebrated her 6th birthday anniversary last Saturday afternoon, entertaining her little friends and schoolmates. Notwithstanding the inclemency of the weather, 32 were present. Owing to the rain, they could not play upon the lawn, so they repaired to Recreation Hall. That was the hall in what became known as St. Andrew's Mission on Pleasant Street. And the building is still there. It's used as a private house. Miss Ethel had many pretty presents, and James Sullivan, in behalf of the little people, presented her with a gold ring. Music and games were enjoyed as only children can enjoy them, after which they formed in line and marched to the tables, which were tastefully decorated for the occasion. After all the good things were disposed of, Mildred Precious presented the little hostess with a large doll, beautifully dressed. All departed for their homes after wishing her many happy returns of the day. Among the out-of-town guests were Masters Harry and Arthur Cornell, Lester and Lillian Bailey of Lowell. And that's the news in Westford for the week ending August 1st, 1908. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nick Woodbury of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions from the Wardsman at the Westford Historical Society's website at museum.westford.org or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.